Welcome to my channel, INTJ Island. Today I'm going to talk about an INTJ take on free will. Yesterday, Darticus Maximus posted a comment asking what my take is on free will and whether it exists or are our actions merely deterministic based upon plausibility and what all that means to us as individuals. I would like to thank him for that engaging question. Discussion of this topic has gone on for thousands of years, and it may go on for thousands more. So all I can give you here is my take on it. I saw a video a while back that cited a study that showed that the human mind has measurable preparatory activity prior to a subject engaging in ostensibly spontaneous action. This is interesting, but since we are still unclear on how decisions are made, how can we decide whether such preparatory activity is not part of a free will spontaneous choice? In other words, the jury is still out on whether this establishes a demonstrable limit to free will. Let's set some context for this discussion. Take a horse in a corral. It can walk or it can stand still. It can run across the corral, around the corral clockwise or counterclockwise. Suddenly it can reverse direction and do various other things like rearing up or eating and so on. However, it is not free to choose to run free across the meadow on the other side of the fence. There are limits to what it can choose to do set by the location of the fence, assuming the gate to the corral is securely locked. Metaphorically, this represents hard stop limits to what we can choose to do. Some choices are not possible to make, such as springing up in our most powerful leap and thereby touching the moon. And it doesn't stop with the fence. Even if a stallion is free to roam outside of the corral, he still is limited in what he can do. His choices are far more extensive, but there are physical limits he cannot cross, such as rivers, mountains, or the sea. Clearly, we cannot choose to do just anything at all. It must first be a possible choice. We can't leap up and touch the moon, but we might ride in a rocket and thereby actually touch the moon. Circumstances, therefore, impact heavily on what we could possibly and freely choose to do. It is nearly universally agreed upon that we do have limits to what we can choose to do, set by our circumstances. We may quibble about how hard and fast these circumstances might constrain us in detail, but clearly they do exist. So, if the discussion was whether or not we may make any choice at any time, the question would be resolved in the negative already. Clearly and absolutely we have limits to what we can choose. However, this is usually not what most people mean when they discuss free will. Given our limitation to our actions, within our corral, if you will, are we able to make truly free choices about what we will do, or are we controlled by something other than our free will? If I get dressed in the morning and I choose what to wear, can I freely choose to wear a red tie or a blue tie? Is it free will that causes my hand to reach out and take the blue tie this morning? Or is it perhaps some long series of events or outside forces that drive my choice? Am I perhaps destined to choose blue because there is some mental state that came about because I have been conditioned to wear a different tie today from the one I wore yesterday, or an external standard of what goes with the shirt I'm wearing, or that my wife likes better? Or something else entirely, but that lies outside of myself and my ability to freely choose. Perhaps it is even the opposite of that, in that I find it irksome that everything seems to be pushing me to wear the red tie today, and so I take the blue tie out of spite. But is even that truly free will? This question runs very deep in that we have a biological history that goes way back. How much of what we choose to do is determined by our genetics? There are pressures upon us to do things that come from our history, not our personal desires. There is an entire genre of fiction that is dedicated to romance. Online, there are innumerable videos dedicated to dating and romantic relationships. This tremendous fascination with romance is biologically driven, not free will. Where does this control stop? What we want to eat, or even what recreational activities we choose to engage in, are in some ways predetermined by past choices, our biology, and other factors. Do we have free will at all? Or are we merely puppets dancing on a string of conditions, chemical changes in our bodies, past history, and similar things? Courts of law take this concept into consideration. If you do something illegal, what the court decides to do is altered by whether or not you are considered to be sane. There are conditions where you are understood not to have free will and therefore are not responsible for your actions. But is it black and white, or is it a spectrum? Or perhaps you are never truly responsible for your own actions. The latter is a nihilism of the will. If you have no free will and are not responsible for your own actions, then you have no meaning and are a construct, a non-playable character in a video game that only says and does what it has been told to do, with no freedom to act in any other way. My take on this is that we are far more like the playable characters in a video game. We have limitations in what choices we can make, to be sure. There are only certain things we can choose to do, and then there are many forces at work that limit us even farther. We have things we like to do and things we don't like to do, and we will tend to choose the former over the latter. What has created these preferences might very well be outside of our control. Biology, past history, nostalgia, aspiration for something we don't have, or just the desire to enjoy sensual pleasure may be pushing us to prefer one course of action over another. I look at this as being a question of whether or not we have sufficient control of our actions to make our own lives something that we can shape within the limits we are handed by reality. For example, I can choose to master a skill. Maybe there are outside factors that create a desire within me to master the skill, but I will not master the skill unless I choose to apply myself to the process. I might choose to do this and fail miserably in the attempt. Perhaps I have no aptitude for that skill and end up having to give it up. We try and fail, or we try and succeed. Assuming that we were not pushed into it by someone else, it appears to me that it is our will, free or otherwise, that is driving the choice to try, and a combination of our determination and various circumstances that determine whether or not we succeed. Most programming languages have a random number generator function. They are called pseudo-random numbers because they are not truly random. Given the same seed value to start the generator off, they will produce the same sequence of numbers. This is handy for creating encryption routines. However, even though the pseudo-random numbers are not truly random, if you have a method for seeding them in a random way, they are close enough for most applications. I've seen a generator online that takes in values from a cosmic ray counter at any given moment in order to seed their generator. For most applications, using a pseudo-random number generator is good enough. If you want to create a throw of a die, the results will fall very closely along the statistical curve that a real die would give you if you rolled it over and over again. 1 time in 6, on average, each one of the numbers will show up at the output. I look at our ability to make free will choices in a similar manner. We may be swayed very strongly by the past and present influences upon us, clear down into our body's chemistry and physiological makeup, as well as our personal and cultural history. But at the end of the day, even if it is a pseudo-generated free will that makes our choices, it is good enough to allow us to live a full and meaningful life that includes joy, satisfaction, challenges, and successes. It is what we have to work with, and I think it is enough. Whatever passes for free will in my life engages me, gives me purpose, and brings me happiness and fulfillment. If humans do not possess it, perhaps one day artificial intelligence will create true free will that will be devoid of past or present deterministic influences upon its choices. Or maybe, as some philosophers have asserted, free will is utterly impossible to exist. It is easy to assert such things, but far more difficult to prove them. We may not know the answers for certain, but we still have to live our lives right now. That is what I'm doing, and I hope that is what you are doing as well. What do you think about free will? If it does not exist in a pure form, or perhaps in any form, does it matter to you? Do you need it in order to enjoy life and to pursue life, liberty, and happiness? Further, do you think you can pursue truth without free will driving you? Please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please click like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you click on the bell, you will also receive notifications when I put up a new video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.